and it's an appointment there. So, and then we talked about some specific issues. One member had some concerns about a wheelchair lift and how that works with um, wheelchairs, ironically. So that was essentially the gist of the Citizens Committee meeting. So that concludes my report.
All right, and actually, Director, but leads right into well, before we move it on, any comments or questions from the board? None? Okay, seeing none, next up's the state rodeo competition report. Did I pronounce that right?
It's a play on words, but it is referred to as the rodeo.
Gotcha. I thought it's clever if anybody noticed that spelling.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to be able to share some information about the rodeo competition. As many of you may remember our discussions in past about the whole concept behind the competition. It's a two-part competition. It is a driving course that is set up for different size vehicles, basically what we refer to as cutaway, which is the smaller vehicles that we use for our access program, 35-foot full-size coaches, and then the larger ones that we operate are 40-foot. So in the bus competition, there is a course that is specific for each of those size vehicles. Then there's also a maintenance rodeo, and I think I shared some information on the last national rodeo that our folks competed in, and gave you a brief overview of exactly what that entails. It is essentially, we have a team of maintenance staff that will get cycled through various modules of their work life, I guess you would say. There's a module that deals with the engine, and they're faced with the challenge that there's an engine and transmission module that has had a number of bugs put into it, and they're time to figure out and get the engine running again, as well as other components of the vehicle itself. That there's a section on the air doors and air brakes and things of that nature. So the process that we use, and many of the systems in the state use, is that we all hold our own local competition. In our case, we hold a competition and we invite our local friends. We call it the Peninsula Cup, and folks from Jefferson, Transit, Clown, Mason. And actually this past year, we had folks coming up from the inner city, which is down in Thurston County, as well as from King County Metro. And part of that is the fact that these folks that compete, we can't pay them to go out and train. They have to do this on their own. So they use these local competitions as an opportunity to perfect their skills. So they come compete, and they get an opportunity to drive the course. The course is the same course, whether it's local, state, or national. So it was kind of an interesting, fun event for us. And then we take, if our operators place, and that's just within our ranks, if they place first place in our local competition, we then take them to the state competition. And there they compete with transits from all over the state. If they're successful in that competition, we then take them to the national competition, which is, as you can imagine, way more challenging. So we held the state competition in August over at Tri-Cities. And I think we have some photos here. We just wanted to do a little quick report on this. Go ahead with the next. Essentially, this was the competition in Tri-Cities. These three gentlemen, James, Irish, Spencer, Wilslow, and Ruben Costello, were the three members from our maintenance team that competed in the state competition. In the operator, Robert Floyd, who you, I'm sure, remember. Robert, I think he's not here yet, but he's hopefully going to be here. Robert was the first place winner in the state competition last year, and he competed in the national competition just recently in Florida. Val Quill, you may remember Val. Val was our senior operator who has got, I think she holds certainly the state record. If not, she was recognized by the National Safety Council with, at the time, which was like 3 years ago, I think it was 36 years of safe driving. She continues that tradition, and I don't want to jinx it by saying that. She competed in the 35 foot. And then the next operator is one, Lexi is she's relatively new to Kitsap Transit. And I'm not sure, Lexi, when did you start at Kitsap? It was not long ago. And Lexi, yeah. Well, she's relatively new, and we're excited to have Lexi in the competition. She came in number one in our local competition, obviously, and she went to the state competition as well. Next one. Now, this just gives you kind of a snapshot of the driving course that these folks are tested on, and it's a combination. It's a timed event, but it's also an accuracy event. Next one. And this is probably one of the most challenging in my mind. They have the requirement to back into this stall established by these cones. They have just exactly enough room because there's cones on the far side that can't swing out, line themselves up, and those sorts of things. So it's a bit of a challenge. Next slide. And then this gives you a little bit better picture of the precision that they have to do. They have to run their coach, their wheels between a row of tennis balls that are just basically sitting there on basically a washer. So there's not much effort to knock one of those tennis balls off of their holder. And those tennis balls are both on the outside as well as the inside of their duals. Next slide. Here you can see them going through. So each one of those tennis balls have a value. If you touch them, it works against you. Now, the exciting news. Robert just walked in. So Robert, come on up. I'd like to introduce you once again to Robert Floyd. Robert is not only last year's #1 state rodeo winner, but he's this year's rodeo winner for the competition. And we're excited to look forward to taking Robert to the national competition when that happens. So Robert, I wanted to once again introduce you to the board and then give you an opportunity, if you push the little button on the right, if there's anything that you would like to say. It should just, there you go.
I don't have a whole lot to say.
Oh,
I went out there and I always say I got lucky. And it happened again. It'd be nice if I could do it a third time. I'll try. Any of y'all have any questions for me that maybe John didn't cover?
What's your usual route?
Currently, I'm SK ride out of Port Orchard.
So Robert, you give a whole new meaning. This is not your first rodeo?
Yes.
well, I think the thing that makes this even more exciting for Robert, and he shared this with me at the competition, and I will share it. His there's a number of aspects. It's not only driving, but there's also they're tested on pre-trip. They have to inspect their vehicles and wheelchair tie downs and things of that nature. And last year, when they totaled the scores, he came up number one, but in his driving, he was kind of second, but the total still made him one. So a couple of the other drivers, there's a little friendly competition amongst the agencies, had commented that, yeah, you're first place, but you didn't get it through driving skills. So this year, he got it with everything, driving skills, pre-trip and everything. So, he's a little modest, but Robert, I think, is going to be able to walk around and share with folks that he earned it in all aspects. So,
Yes, this was my favorite rodeo out of all, and I've done several. This is the one I like the most.
Thank you, Chair Wheeler. Robert, I suspect there's a lot more than luck on this, and congratulations. Has there been anybody else who's repeat champion like you have?
Yes, we had Rodney Carlson, who's retired now. He's won twice, and we've had Dan out of Inner City, Dan Savage. He's won twice. Actually, I think he's got three also, but two back-to-backs like I just did. I've got three now myself.
Well, this is a back-to-back plus you did it previously.
Yeah, from last year and then this year. That's
That's
what's
two.
I like. I like that.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
to be Inner City makes it even better.
Awesome. Thanks, Robert.
Thanks for having me here. If there's you got another question, Anna.
Thanks. Okay, so I used to be a professional driver and I fancy myself with precision. Is there a non-secret part of how you got between those tennis balls that you can share with us?
Boy, it's the whole thing for me is nerve-wracking, but the old Manette Bridge is kind of an example. Going across that in a bus, you just kind of like squint your eyes and hold your breath. It's kind of like that, because the balls in our coaches, the body on chassis, they don't appear until you're already into them, and then you're like, once you see that rear tire and you can see it reaching the balls, your front tire is already through it, so you don't know if you hit anything or not. So it's a lot of, for me, it's a lot of just holding my breath and crossing my fingers, praying.
So updating the Manette Bridge actually removed a training opportunity for the
Yes,
driver to come? Thank you.
that might have helped me there.
Congratulations.
Robert, before you go, and if the board would indulge us, I'd like to get a photograph of you and I in front of the board. And we've got Christian here to take your pictures, so.
Three, two, one. All right, there we go.
As Robert is returning to his seat, I'd like to also share, as I mentioned, we're unable to pay these folks to train for this competition. They have to do that on their own. And as I mentioned, there are times where they will go to other systems, rodeos, just to have an opportunity to practice. The next participant I know had gone to Island County to compete, to Metro to train and compete, to Inner City down in Olympia to train and compete. And the next recipient is the, go ahead, change, the operator for the 35-foot coach, and that's Val Quill. So Val, come on up. And as I mentioned, when I talked about her participation, Val is our senior operator who has got many, many years of competition. And Val, I'm going to make this public now. She and I have an agreement that she cannot retire until I retire. So we're going to have her around for a little while longer, I hope. So Val, how many times and where all did you travel to practice or compete? And you have to push a little button on the right there. Yeah.
I think I've went to the state about 8 times. Nationals 4 or 5. I've been to Yakima, Spokane a couple times, Tacoma, Vancouver twice. Yeah, over the 39 years, it's hard to remember where I went.
But just for this last competition, you went Island County and others. Push the button. There you go.
There we go. Went to Whidbey Island to Island Transit, and I went to Olympia, Inner City. I practiced over in Tukwila. And I practiced quite a few times down in Olympia, and then did the rodeo here in Bremerton.
And again, this is a competition with it's the same course, but it is proportionately set up for the size of vehicle that Val drove, the 35-foot full-size Gillick coach. So I just wanted to congratulate Val and give you an opportunity to share anything you might want to share.
I think it's really important that we have a bus rodeo. It keeps us all out of trouble. You know, you have to do well. You have to stay out of trouble and good attendance and no complaints in order to be eligible to do the rodeo. So I think it's good competition, and really enjoy going to state and competing with the other drivers. It's a lot of fun.
Any questions?
Okay, I'm looking at it, all you guys. What's the agency that you compete the most against? I've heard Intercity talked about a couple times here. Who's your biggest competition?
Intercity.
Intercity.
Inner city,
Okay.
they get to practice a lot more.
Okay,
They have the course set up for 2-3 weeks before a competition for their drivers to compete. But they also open it to other agencies to come down and practice.
very interesting. Thank you.
All right.
Same thing if you could indulge us for another photo.
All right.
And then I would also, once again, at least like to recognize Lexi. Come on up if you want. Although she didn't place #1, she's our rising star, and we're so excited about having her not only come in first, excuse me, at our local competition, but even to go to the state competition, which I'm sure everybody can imagine is nerve-wracking. You're kind of in there competing against the best in the state. So Lexi, I just wanted to give you an opportunity. Thank you publicly for your involvement, your participation, and give you an opportunity as well. Anything to share? You have to push a little button on the right to turn the mic on.
Awesome.
Okay, Lexi, picture.
They're figuring it out.
John, we were talking about maybe one big group photo op with all.
Well, I was gonna wait till maintenance.
Okay.
We get, oh.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. No.
Okay, now onto the maintenance side. As I mentioned, go ahead with the next. These gentlemen, in our case, have these different modules that they have to go through, and these modules are set up with some kinds of problems that test their skills of identifying and fixing those problems. This happens to be the air brake system on a coach, the air system. And again, these are timed events that they have to go through. And they have, they're scored on how many of the problems they can identify, as well as how many they can correct in the time frame that they have to do that. Next one. This is the multiplex board. You can imagine the wiring complexity of a transit coach with all of the technology and things of that nature. It's on a bus, and it's a series of computers and lights and codes and things that these folks have to go through. And once again, there's bugs planted in here that they have to identify. This is just, again, one of the modules. This is the engine module. It's an engine and transmission that, once again, is set up with bugs that they have to figure out, get the engine running, and try to correct as many of them as they can within their time frame. And then this is one of the last ones I'll show you. And this is essentially the air door system on the front of a coach. And that is to a module that they have to go in and identify what those challenges are. And we're excited to announce that our maintenance team came in number one. So, gentlemen, please come on up and these three folks, as like the driving competition, they we can't pay them to train, but they spend many hours of their own time studying and trying to figure out any of the potential solutions to problems. I know one of them was sharing with me the hours that they spent the night before the competition studying and reading the manuals on these different components so that they're completely up to speed. And they competed last year in the nationals, and now we're excited to take them again to the national competition to compete in there. So, gentlemen, I don't know if one of you or all of you would like to share something. You're welcome to push the button on the right there, and you can move the mic up a little. There you go.
Thanks for the opportunity to go and compete. I just joined the team this year. You know, we worked really hard this year, but these two guys have been at it for a few more years than me. Just grinding away, studying, working hard, training, and you know, we slayed the beast in our city. So happy to be a part of it.
Ruben, you're never lack of words. You sure you don't want to share something?
Question.
All
Yes.
right, then.
But-
If anybody has any
Yeah.
questions.
Was it Ruben? Oh, Ruben, who spoke? So you're a rookie? Really? Okay. And you guys have competed before? Oh, God. Awesome.
We get Mayor Erickson and then Councilor Mochler. Yep.
So I saw the Gillig up there on the screen, so you're working on Gilligs. Do you guys have, I mean, I know maybe this is a funny question, but is there one coach that you see coming in for maintenance over and over and over? I mean, is there like, I know when I was working boats, there was always one boat that always gave us hack. Do you have that situation in Kitsap Transit where you see one coach that just never seems to do what it's supposed to do?
And don't mention Proterra.
Proterra? Always a problem. Okay, but in the Gilligs, is there like one or two that just seem to always be breaking? I mean, that's what we found out with boats, is that it just like, no matter what we did, that one boat was always a pain in the rear. Do you have that at all? No? No? No. But the Proterra is a pain in the, that's the one. Okay. All right. Thank you very much for all you do. Appreciate it.
Congratulations. I think it'd be really great if you guys would consider doing a demonstration for the Washington Science Fair this coming spring. I think it'd be pretty thrilling for a lot of the kids to like watch you go through that. So, thank you.
Okay, you want a group photo of everybody?
Okay, we're a little offset here. So I'm gonna drive everybody in the front. Think through. Yeah, I think, yeah, exactly. Yep, thanks. We walk right there. That's okay. All right. Excuse me for it. Add a little bit to your right. All right, smile a little bit. Yeah.
Question?
And I would like to add that, first off, in response to your question about demonstrating their talents, you have to have the modules to be able to do that. And unfortunately, we don't own modules. We've been slowly acquiring them as training modules that we're using to train the new mechanics, as well as give these guys an opportunity to do some practice, but we still don't have all of the different modules. But the other exciting thing that I will share about this state is that of the 4 competitions, there's 3 in the bus and then 1 in the maintenance. Kitsap Transit brought home 3 first place winners, which is pretty exciting. And to recognize that, we also received the Grand Champion Award, which is the plaque there that you can see. It recognizes Kitsap Transit, and I will say that most of them that are on there have been inner city. So it was kind of a real sweet reward to the competition. Again, it's all friendly competition, but we brought home the gold, if you will, for over intercity. So that was pretty exciting. So I just wanted to share their experiences, share the results of our rodeo, and I guess publicly thank them all for the great job that they did.
Commissioner?
Yeah, I just had well, first, congratulations. Like, it's makes you so proud that you work for the Kitsap Transit and that we have you here. So thank you. I did have a question for John. Is our bus simulator set up so that they can practice?
It is, and we have the module, if you will, or the program set that will replicate the driving course so that they can use that. We haven't yet been able to do that. In fact, I've been chatting with Valerie about coming down and testing it out for us to check it out. And Robert, I'd extend that invitation to you as well to come down and just experience the simulator to see how it is. It'll never replace the actual driving because you don't have people sitting behind you, timing you, and the judging the quality of your ride, but it still gives you practice on maneuvering.
Right. All right. Seeing no other kind of comments, questions, or anything from our board. Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. We are going to move on to the next agenda item, which is consent. I haven't normally read this description of what this next phase on the agenda is, but I'll read it this time. All matters listed on the consent agenda have been distributed to the board, are considered routine, and will be enacted by one motion with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda by a board member. So I'll entertain a motion when you're ready.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion by Mayor Patansu is second by Commissioner Garrido. And so discussion, yes, Commissioner Rolfs.
Is item G what Councilmember Mochler wanted to have removed?
No, she got her question answered.
Did you get your question answered? So we don't need to remove it?
Yeah.
Yes, we have to approve this part and then we can move on to the offering them to nonprofits part.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further comments, questions, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. On to full discussion items, starting with resolution 2458.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this resolution is asking for permission to exercise the change order number 2 for the construction or the design phase of the new maintenance facility in Paulsville. Initially, we went out to bid for a firm that could accomplish 3 tasks. One was the preliminary design. The second would be the design such that it would be ready for bidding. And then the third would be for construction management, but we only awarded the first phase, which was the conceptual design. And then that allowed us to determine if it's feasible for us to move to the next phase. And this is the project that we recently received the announcement of the RAISE grant to allow us to move forward. So we're asking for permission now to exercise the change order number 2, which would then give the contractor, TCF Architecture, the opportunity to move forward with the complete design, the construction drawings and things of that nature.
All right, clarifying comments or questions, Mayor Erickson.
I'd just like to put the motion on the table.
Yes.
I move approval to adopt resolution 2458, authorizing staff to award phase 2 of the North Base Heavy Duty Maintenance Facility Design Project with TCF Architecture in the amount of $1,324,146 plus
Sec-
applicable sales.
Second, and if I could add a comment under question for the motion. Director Clausen came to Paulsbo City Council about a month ago, addressed this for the entire council. We're very excited about this project on the north end. Subsequent to that, we had our ad hoc meeting with the Bainbridge City Council representatives, went over the project with them, including the conclusion with the double-decker buses. So considerable excitement in the north end about this project, Mr. Chair.
All right,
Mr. Chair.
good to hear. Yes, here.
The Edward Rose Oslo Bay Apartments is moving forward very quickly. And if you drive by 305, you'll see this huge. So it's, the timeline's getting tough. How are we with also the Ruth Haynes piece and, the connectivity? Is that all moving forward in a, expeditious way? Because, they're going to be building a whole lot of apartments up there real quick.
My understanding is things are moving well, but Stephanie has more of the detail information.
Hi, everyone. Stephanie Lilly, Service and Capital Development Director. We were moving very expeditiously on moving the Vetter to the Ruth Haynes and doing that swap. We just learned on Friday, and this John isn't aware of this yet, that we actually have to complete NEPA on the old Vetter Road before we can do the swap. So we're going to combine that NEPA portion with this project, and we'll do that official road swap and vacation at that point. But because it's going to become part of a federal facility, we have to, and that was not part of the overall NEPA before because it was part of a city roadway. It's one piece of right of way that we need to now complete that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I mean, seriously, a year from now, they will have those apartments in, and there's supposed to be 468 of them. So we are really counting on the connectivity to the transit.
Ruth Haynes is open and operational and people are using it. So right now we have both Vetter and Ruth Haynes open and they can continue using that while we go through this process.
Super. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Any other comments or questions? We do have a motion and a second on the floor, so I see no other comments or questions. I will call the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? All right, motion carries unanimously. Next up, resolution number 2459.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this resolution is asking for authority to approve change order for the rebuild of two of our Caterpillar engines. We awarded a contract earlier to Tacoma Diesel and Equipment to do the rebuild, but essentially the first phase of it was to do an assessment of what really needed to be replaced, what could be refurbished and things of that nature. They've done that assessment, determined what needs to be replaced. They've come back with the additional funds to now move forward with the rebuilding of the engines. And that's why this would be a change order number one for the rebuild of these engines.
All right, I'll entertain a motion. Mayor
Chair,
Thompson.
I move to adopt resolution 2459 approving KT 24-912 change order number one in the amount of $101,418.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? All right. Councilor Morawaki, second. So yeah, go ahead.
John, I'm just curious, which vessels are these engines for?
I would turn to Ray. Which vessels would these engines be? So that the RP class vessels.
Okay. All right, seeing no other comments or questions, I will call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. All right, next up. Resolution 2460.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this resolution is asking for permission to award a contract for the dry docking and some repairs needed for the finest. This is a process following our normal procurement process. The vessels need to come out of the water on a regular basis for Coast Guard inspection, things of that nature. And we were out to bid for having that conducted, and we are proposing to award this contract to Pacific Fishermen Shipyard in Seattle. Now, the finest is in dry dock getting work done on it in kind of an emergency basis right now, but what this approval will do is allow us to then plan for a future dry docking and Coast Guard inspection to make sure that we're following in compliance with Coast Guard regulations.
All right. Seeing no requests for clarification or comments on that, I'm going to entertain a motion.
I'm going to make a motion. Move to adopt resolution 2460, authorizing staff to award KT 24-917 MB finest inspection and repairs to Pacific Fishermen and Electric LLC in the amount of $213,600.
We have a motion from Mayor Patansu.
Second.
All right, second from Councilor Morwaki. Any comments or questions?
Something we have to do. It's expensive, but got to keep these boats in the water. We don't want to have any more situations like we're having right now with the boats are out of service.
Okay. All right, seeing no other comments or questions, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Last item under full discussion, resolution 2461.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this resolution is a little bit unique in that due to the fact that we took August off. Yes, it is. Due to the fact that we did not have an opportunity to have you folks together to get approval, we had a situation came up that I acted on with the concurrence of the board chair. The Argosy cruise in Seattle has noticed and is experiencing a lot of wake issues with their operation and affecting their vessels and their docks. And the owner, Kevin Clark, who we have worked with over the years of our ferry operation, and in fact, as a reminder that we had a contract with him for a while that we operated off of his docks while we were trying to get everything all set up and operating. Anyway, Mr. Clark brought it to both mine and King County water taxi's attention that this was a problem, and it's somewhat difficult to sometimes say exactly, okay, where is the problem? Because as you can imagine, the waterfront of Seattle, there's a lot of vessel traffic, whether it's tugboats, state ferries, our ferries, cruise ships, whatever. So we currently have a contract with Blue Cascade, who's the firm that has been doing our wake analysis and beach impact through Rich Passage, and we've worked with them for a number of years. Our current contract allows us with a bid, if you will, from them to be able to modify our current agreement to include that. Now, it's a bit out of the ordinary. It's a ways from Rich Passage, but they are experts and I could respond quickly. So I reached out to them. They provided us with a quote to conduct an analysis. It's kind of a two-phase. They're going to do kind of an observation and measurement phase. And then if they can actually point to a particular problem, if you will, then they will, if necessary, will go into a more in-depth analysis. But the first phase was just let's figure out if we can where these challenges might be coming from. I've been in contact with King County Water Taxi. King County is going to contribute towards and probably cover 50% of this effort on our part. And they have been a part of all the discussions and communications that I've had with both the consultant as well as with Argosy Tours. So they're on board with everything as well. Again, because I didn't have the opportunity to bring this to you before I exercised the reaching out to the board chair and was able to get his concurrence to move forward. So we're authorizing and they're moving forward. The irony in this whole thing is that they were ready to go out and measure, but because of the challenges that we've been having with vessels, and at one point we actually shut down the Kingston service, we put a pause on their analysis until we're back up to having our system running as normal so that we can get a true analysis of where the problem might lie. But what this resolution is doing is essentially confirming the actions that I took along with the board chair's concurrence.
Counselor Moriwaki.
Thank you, Chair Wheeler. Director Clausen, I think you said at the end that Argosy is on board with this process. So if they have whatever determinations this process has, they would accept them?
Well, I can't speak for Kevin. I can only say that he has been a part of all these discussions. He's aware of it. We've actually had to get his permission for these scientists to go down or these engineers to go down and sit on his docks and set up measurements and try to observe what they can. So he is a part of this study. Whether or not he's going to be 100% acceptance of the results is yet to be determined.
Follow up, please.
Yes.
Are they only going to study the King County and Kitsap transit boats, or studying wakes from all different vessels throughout the passage?
Wakes of all the vessels that travel through there to see if they can identify where the problem might lie. They're not focused just on us.
Thank you.
So John, just to follow up question. So if we are the culprit or King County is the culprit, then it could be as simple as changing speeds or the direction we come in or out. Cause I know that's some of the things that we did once we had the data from Rich Passage. So it's not like, I don't think we're considering stopping docking there. I don't think it's just what are the impacts and how can we not do it if we're the culprit?
Yeah, it's exactly that. And part of what the scientists will be doing, I refer to them as scientists, engineers, coastal engineers. Essentially what they're going to be doing as part of their analysis is they can look back at the tracking of vessels and speed of vessels and be able to identify, and they can make some recommendations as they've done for us in the past. Maybe there's a way that we can adjust the course. Maybe there's a way that we can adjust the speeds such that we can minimize that impact.
Mayor.
As a longtime ferry commuter and having the big boats go over the rollers from the freighter traffic, I mean, you know, huge vessels hitting huge wakes from freighters. I guess I'm really confused by this. I mean, you want a wake problem, you know, you have massive container ships going in and out of there, really doing wake issues. So I guess I don't understand why he's asking us to do this, or the fast ferries, because wow, that the wakes are enormous. I mean, when you can take the Walla Walla or the Tacoma and make it do this, okay, and that's what the freighters do. That's the wake issue. That's not our little boats coming in and out. I guess I just don't understand why he wants this.
I think his observations, at least this is how he shared it with us, is that he believes it is coming from one or both of us in our operations, but in a way to be able to, one, identify, and two, see if there's a way to, if it is us, what we can do to mitigate it. This is the logical step forward to go through versus, you know, arguing about who's causing the problem.
Okay, I get it, but all right, I think that this is a lot of noise. You want to know the truth. I mean, so I'm gonna vote for it, but I think it's a lot of noise. So thank you.
Counselor Mochler.
Thanks, Mayor. So Argosy Cruises observed observed Kitsap Transit and King County Marine creating excessive wakes. So apparently they have not seen a freighter crate or a container ship creating any excessive weight. Is that accurate?
That's my understanding. They've been able to identify our vessels because of the frequency, I'm sure. Our vessels come and go throughout the day where freighters
Okay,
don't come.
and this is a new, one second, please, Director Clausen. Mayor, I have 3 questions. So
Sure.
this is the second one coming up.
Okay.
So what is the nature of the damage to the Argosy, to the tethered Argosy fleet?
Well, it is causing some challenges for their operation when they're trying to load and offload their passengers onto their vessels, as well as just their movements of their docks and vessels getting shifted around, I guess, with the pilings and the boats going into the docks, that sort of thing.
Okay. And I guess the Argosy cruises, they're always for pleasure, right? They serve no public service. They perform no public service.
They are a tourist type operation, yes.
Okay. And final question, is this required or are we doing this out of good fellowship?
Well, I believe it's required if we want to have any kind of data that can support our position one way or another. Otherwise, we're relying on observation of, if you will, the complainant.
Okay, and so Argosy has not made any hard measurements themselves?
I'm not aware.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Mayor Patansu, then Commissioner Rolfus.
I'm just want you to confirm or not. I think basically they're making a claim, and before it gets to litigation, this is us protecting ourselves or proving or disproving that it's us. And we could hopefully say it's the Washington State ferries or the container ships causing this damage or these waves. Or we've got to, as I said earlier, maybe make modifications to how we operate. Is that a fair assessment of what I'm seeing happening here?
Well, the claim, if you will, is that this is an issue and he believes it's us. He hasn't put any kind of a complaint or request for funding. He just wants to try to get to the problem. I think your assessment is absolutely correct. If we can identify definitively, that would be extremely helpful as we move forward in trying to resolve this issue. If there are things that we can do, if you can't identify a culprit, if you will, then it's more of a generic issue that they would probably have to deal with. Or, as you mentioned earlier, maybe there's some things that we can do in our operational characteristics that might lessen the impact.
Okay, yes, Commissioner.
And I just want to clarify, you said earlier they're going to be measuring the wake from the freighters and the ferries and Argosy cruises as well?
Well, probably not Argosy Cruises because they are not out operating at that time. But certainly, they're not going to be specific to a particular vessel. They're going to be looking at all the vessel traffic, regardless of tugboats, cruise ships, containers, whatever.
But not Argosy because
Well,
they're done for the season, is that?
No, I said all traffic. So if there is an Argosy boat out there that could be the problem, certainly they will be able to identify that as well.
Yeah, I mean, they might not be their problem, but they might be somebody else's problem.
Correct.
Okay,
I'm willing to make a motion.
all right.
I move to adopt resolution 2461, acknowledges the executive director's approval of KT 24897, change order number 1 with concurrence of the Kitsap Transit Board of Commissioners Chair in the amount of $81,482.
Right, we have a motion. Patansu, second.
Second.
Councilor Morawaki. All right, pretty robust discussion leading up to this. Not seeing any other requests to ask questions, so I will call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And abstentions? We have almost unanimous, but not unanimous. We have a nay by Mayor Erickson and an abstention by Councilor Mockler. That satisfy the clerk? All right. Next up, we're on to the executive director items.
Yes, I have three things I want to share. And one, first off, will be kind of the current status of our ferry fleet. As I'm sure you're all aware, we've been experiencing an unusual high number of maintenance issues with our vessels. Two of the vessels, the primary vessels that we have for both operating Kingston and Southworth, the component that is normally a lifelong life term component that never goes bad, went bad. As I shared with you earlier, when we first experienced it, that we thought there would be a long lead time to get the replacement parts since they're kind of one-off type components. Our Marine Service Director, Ray, and his staff did a great job of working with the manufacturer and got replacements. So those vessels, and then we had a challenge with the Admiral Pete, where we had what was reported as a onboard fire turned out to be essentially a bearing or a coupling between the engine and the propeller that overheated, if you will. Then we had some other issues with some of the others. So I wanted to give you kind of a status on all of our vessels. I'm happy to report that the Carlisle, the Waterman, the Rich Passage One, the Lady Swift, and the Solano are all operating as normal. I mentioned the Admiral Pete and the challenge we had with it. The vessel was taken to Port Townsend, where we lifted the one engine out that was reported to have been on fire and replaced it with one of the spare engines, and that vessel was put back in the water, and we're waiting for last piece to be able to put that vessel back in service, and we expect it to be able to go back into service by the end of this week, first part of next week at the latest. The Reliance was one of the RP class, and it had an engine head gasket problem that required us to pull it out of service, and that was the one vessel that it's a spare vessel for the Bremerton operation that we moved into the Kingston operation to operate while we tried to get the other vessels repaired. And actually we had the RP in Kingston, and Reliance broke, so we had to bring the RP back to Bremerton to operate that service, and we had to suspend operation on the Kingston. We were able to get that vessel into the dry dock, and we're expecting, the vessel is back into operation, so we were able to restore the Kingston service as of last Saturday, I believe. The Enacted, which was one of the front line, and it is currently in dry dock because we have the parts, and that is in the process of being repaired. We believe that vessel will be back out based on their estimates, and we think that we're going to have that vessel by mid-September, ready to go back into operation after sea trials, Coast Guard approvals, and so on. So something that we originally thought was going to be months and months and months away, we're able to get that back into operation. The Commander is the sister to the Enacted. The Commander, we are going through following our procurement policies to get that vessel into dry dock to get the repairs made on it. We hope to be able to bring back an award for your action at the second meeting of this month, or possibly into October. So we want to be able to get that vessel in and get repaired right away. The Finest is one of the other vessels, the spares, if you will, and it had a problem with one of its water jets, similar to one that we experienced earlier on that same vessel. And that vessel is in getting worked on now, and the technicians that are going to be actually doing the repairs, there's specialists they're scheduled to be there today to make the final improvements on that, and we're hoping to have that vessel back into operation again by mid-month, maybe as early as the 10th of this month. So that's kind of the status. We hope by mid-month that we should be pretty much back to, with the exception of the commander, back to having adequate vessels to be able to support the operation. The only other caveat that I would place is that, as I mentioned earlier, when you awarded the contract for dry docking of the Finest, all of these vessels have to go in to meet Coast Guard requirements for, if you will, service, and they all will have to, or not all, but a lot of them will have to be hauled out and inspected sometime within the next 3 to 6 month time period. So hopefully we'll have spares available so that we can schedule those haul out such that we're not in a situation where we're like what we have been in the last few weeks. So that's kind of the current status. The other thing I would, just as a caveat, I would add to it, and thank you, Commissioner Rolfus, for your comments that you received. We're looking at the verbiage that we're using when we're communicating with the community as to the problems, and we're trying to provide a little bit more information, or at least not being so sorry we broke and we're not going to be operating until further notice. We're going to try to, as best we can, give a little bit more information than we can, so that it may be that, I'm sorry, we're going to have to suspend service while we whatever, go out to bid or bring in the specialists or whatever. We'll provide some more information. So we're kind of reviewing that verbiage that we're going to be using for our messaging. If there isn't any questions or comments on the ferries, I'll move on to 2 other items quickly.
What would be really helpful to me, because I can't remember between the Washington State Ferries and Kitsap Transit, which boat goes where and which boat is broken. And so it would be really nice if we had a chart of all the boats and what routes they're normally ascribed to and whether they're working or not. And if that's possible, I'd like that from the Washington State Ferries too. That'd be very, very helpful. Just, what's working and what's not. The other thing I think we need to do is we need to have a real interesting, informative conversation about how many boats do we really need in order to run this operation. My guess is we're probably going to need more spares. And what does that look like from a capital standpoint? We're in the boat business, okay, and the boats break, especially these little ones that run really fast. They burn their engines up. We know that. We knew that going in. So we're here, and the people expect us to keep these boats running, or let's put it this way. They expect to be able to go to their docks and catch the boat. And they don't really care which boat, but they want a boat to get them from point A to point B. So we really need we have maybe a reconsideration of what redundancy really looks like for these fast ferries. So I really want to say thank you, John, to you and the entire team that keeps these boats running. This is not easy stuff. These are small, fast boats, and they burn themselves up, meaning they're high stress on the engines, and they break. And so we really need to think about what redundancy looks like for a fast ferry fleet. Thank you.
All right. I'm just going to work my way down the dais. So Commissioner Rolfus.
First, I want to say thank you to John and his team for reconfiguring the communications after the first one. And just for people's, I guess, general awareness, the people have been so battered by Washington State ferries over the last 4 or 5 years that when Kitsap Transit issues a statement that says service is suspended until further notice, the public gets really scared, because if that were Washington State ferries, it would mean for 4 years.
Yeah.
Right. And so nobody knew what what to expect. And there was just a lot of panic and anxiety. And John's team that was an emergency announcement, I think. And then within a day or two, a really good communication went out that said, we think we'll have a boat up on Saturday. Here's what's going on. We think by mid-September, things will be stable. It just was much better. And people literally emailed me and said, thank you. That second communication helps a lot.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's just how important it is. I think we just haven't had that dramatic situation with our service. To the mayor's point about redundancy, I think that the work we did that we just approved a month or so ago of like pre-ordering parts is going to help with this too. And then the third thing is, hopefully we will never need to do this again, but to have an emergency setup in place. We've been really good at putting transit service when the state ferries goes down to shuttle people back to where they came from or where they want to be. But I'm not sure we had to think it through when our own ferries go down. And so that is backup too. And John has assured me that we have a plan in place. The boat that's there right now is smaller. And so it's very likely to be selling out. And, people can't take their bikes necessarily because there aren't as many bike racks on it. And so just to have for the riders to know they can at least get to the Bainbridge terminal directly without having to connect 2 times is that's a real service too. So I guess I'm kind of explaining the details, highlighting how anxious people were and saying thank you for putting the right systems in place.
Excellent. Thank you. Counselor Stern.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 points. You mentioned improved communication with the public, which is great. I'm wondering, when a crunch like this happens, it's extraordinary, the best way to communicate with the board too, so that I'm sure you're speaking with the chair and you'll take an incoming call, but I'm hesitant because your workload and the staff is already heavy, to keep us alert. I know at some point in the curve with like Kingston Ferry, I was kind of half relying on the Seattle Times articles to keep up to speed. And so if you would look at that, that might be helpful so that we're not incoming calling you individually, because I don't think that would be helpful either. And then number 2, I'm just off the top of your head, John, how many regular passengers would be affected up in Kingston? I know we saw the pandemic change in numbers. What's the average load? Do you have a range?
I don't know if we can say an average because they fluctuate so much differently because of specific times and commute hours. I will tell you, out of the 3 routes, we thought Kingston would be the second heaviest used, and it's actually the 3rd out of the 3. As far as the largest number of passengers, the Bremerton route, on average, I would say 5 to 6 trips a day are at capacity currently. Because normally speaking, the Kingston and Southworth vessels are so much larger that there have been times where the Southworth boat, on a rare occasion, probably carries more passengers on a single trip than any of the 3 routes combined. But it's an isolated trip again, and it's not regular. So they're all pretty well used, and the ridership continues to grow. But out of the 3, Bremerton is the busiest, has the highest ridership. Southworth the second, and Kingston would be 3rd.
All right, Counselor Marwaki.
Thank you, Chair Wheeler, and thanks to my colleagues here. I agree with all your comments, so no need to repeat them. A couple questions for the director. I don't know what our IT budget is, but I often use Ferry Friend, and State Department of Washington Transportation has also a very nice website, an app to track ferries in real time. To Mayor Erickson's idea, if that's even a possible thing to do that, I have no idea. But a lot of the issues that we would have here, I go to that thing a lot because I can see where the boat is, or it'll say expected departure and such. If that's something we could replicate, I don't know if our IT is robust enough to do that, but perhaps that would be something that as people can follow our buses, perhaps it can do that with the ferry, the ferries as well.
We can, and we're moving in that direction. That the new technology that we're installing on the buses, and we actually have some buses now that are out there running around with the new technology, and we're kind of testing it. We're going to have that. It's referred to as automatic vehicle location, or AVL. We're going to have that same system on those vessels as well, so they'll be able to be tracked when they're in operation. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
I have two other issues.
Yeah.
If I may, very quickly. One, I just wanted to clarify that we had you approve a resolution 2432, when we were putting in the vessel monitoring system on the vessels, and the system is in there and is starting to help us now and being able to monitor that. But the terminology that we used in the resolution, we'd indicated that this was in the capital budget. It was $100,000 expenditure, and it was in the capital budget. But the clarification I wanted to make sure is that it's in the capital. There's funds in the capital budget to cover the project. There wasn't a specific line item in the capital budget that said for this particular project. So I just wanted to make sure that we were transparent, and that I wanted to clarify that little bit of a discrepancy in case somebody looked in the capital budget and said, well, where's the line item for this project? So, and then the last one is an kind of an interesting situation. Our National Transit Association has its annual meeting in Anaheim, California at the end of September, and it's the 29th through October 2nd. And currently, I had planned to attend, as our Vice Chair, Mayor Patanzo, has agreed to attend, but it's going to fall on one of the board meeting days. October 1st is the board meeting. So I guess I'm asking for direction from the board. We could cancel the October 1st meeting and conduct all of the business in the second meeting in October, if that's acceptable.
Sure.
Or not go to the conference. That's also an option. So what would the board prefer?
You know, I'm gonna look for head nods for an affirmative to cancel. And I'm seeing a lot of head nods saying yes. Does anybody not want or does not feel that's right to cancel the earlier one? Yes, Mayor.
Well, I know you don't have a crystal ball, John, but is there anything mission critical that we have to do with that period on October 1st?
Well,
I know you don't have a crystal ball, but I mean,
if we know early enough that we're not going to have, it's like taking August off, we work around that.
sure.
Because we know in advance, and we'll just plan around that not being the case. It isn't quite as long of a period as taking the entire month of August off. And there again, if there's an emergency that comes up, as long as I have access to the board chair,
Which he does.
that's acceptable, then.
He might hide from. All right, thank you.
All right, so,
Chair Wheeler,
oh, yes, Counselor.
Director Clausen and Council Mayor Rob, And there is a third option. You can spend an hour and a half on Zoom while you're down there. So, but I don't think you want to do that.
Good, that's the third option.
Yep, let's reserve that for an emergency.
Okay, I'm taking that as we'll go ahead and plan on October 1st being canceled.
Yes.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay.
And then not part of mine, but under the staff recognition, I don't know if we have the drivers of the month here. Okay, we do. So if we can move.
Yeah.
into
See, so there's, John, do you have an order you want them to be recognized?
that. No, we usually have Jeff and Catherine here. So Catherine, why don't we go ahead and have the routed driver of the month?
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Catherine Jordan, your Routed Operations Manager, and I am proud to introduce to you today Routed Operator Rick Mendez. Rick was awarded his first Driver of the Month award in July 2024. He's been with Kitsap Transit since December 2021. And he was awarded in the last, since his start of his career at KT, 7 Way to Go awards, 1 Co-Pilot Distinguished Driver Award, and has been on the honor roll 11 times. He earned his 2-year Safe Driving Award in December 2023. His most memorable event at Kitsap Transit was participating in the KT Rodeo, as you've heard from other people today. Great honor. Rick's professional goal is to be the best driver and to be a future mentor. And his personal goals are to ride his Harley to the 4 corners of the United States and drive Route 66 and to be the best husband. Rick's hobbies.
Well said.
And I will say that his wife Lana is here today with him. So it sounds like he's moving in the right direction. Rick's words of Rick's words of wisdom to fellow drivers are to stay positive, stay aware, and just be friendly. So congratulations to you, Rick. Anything you'd like to say? Okay. So if you go up to see Mayor Wheeler.
It's for you. The picture.
With no meeting last month in August, we wanted to take just a moment to recognize those drivers of the month for June 2024, which would have been recognized. The routed driver of the month for June 2024 was David Clark, who has been with Kitsap Transit since 2021. And I have the honor today to also recognize the worker drivers of the month for the June and July. June was Brian Kingsbury, and July 2024 was Ronald Braga.
I'm Jeff Bancourt, Access Manager, and recognizing Access Driver of the Month for June 2024 was Access Operator Fenya Joy, and Access Driver of the Month for July 2024 was Access Operator Carla Bradshaw. I apologize, they had to skip out and go drive us. So, thank you.
All right. Yes.
And Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to acknowledge that we have Dylan Doty in the audience are state lobbyists, and wanted him to take a couple minutes just to kind of share the lay of the land, and certainly make yourself available to any questions or comments that you may have. There you go.
Now I am. All right. Good morning. Dylan Doty before you this morning to give a quick lay of the land, which can be summarized by we don't know yet. So there you go. Now, obviously, we do have a few things that we know that I did want to just do a quick level set. Obviously, as we're heading into the fall and we're looking to set our legislative agenda for the 2025 session, there's a few things we know or think we know, and then a couple of things that are going to be left undetermined until after November. What we do know or think we know is that the Democrat majorities aren't going to change much. If the primary election numbers hold, it would have the Dems picking up maybe one seat in both the House and the Senate, which could be important for bond votes. If they get to that 60% threshold, then obviously it's not necessary to work with the minority party at that point. So take that for whatever it might be worth. But locally, we are going to see some upheaval still after the election, most likely, well, inevitably, with the congressional race either coming from Senator Randall or Senator McEwen moving up, which would prompt an appointment process. 23rd LD looks pretty solid for us right now in terms of Representative Nance. Look like he's coming back. 26th LD, open seat, the possibility of former Representative Jesse Young returning or Addison Richards taking over in that. And then, of course, the Senate seat in the 26th could be up if and when Emily Randall wins the congressional race. What I wanted to highlight, though, today is obviously something that I'm sure is not necessary to highlight too much in detail, but Initiative 2117, the Climate Commitment Act initiative that will be determined in November. If that passes and the CCA goes away, that is a significant amount of funding that comes to transit, public transportation in general across the state. A little bit of an unknown right now. Polling, you can look at it, either way and squint and see a path. But if that does go down, then obviously WISTA, the State Transit Association, is going to be focusing almost predominantly on funding and making sure that we have some sort of a backfill for that. One thing I also wanted to do to highlight is that assuming Bob Ferguson wins, he has already been making a lot of noise about elevating the director of the state ferries to be reporting directly to the governor. It would not necessarily be moving them out of WashDOT, but would be elevating them to move WSF to direct reporting to the governor's office and have a little bit more direct line there, which could potentially be beneficial. In terms of policy items that we know of, or again, think we know, the toll credit proviso that we seek every biennial budget cycle is going to be coming back. We do anticipate that there will be some sort of board governance bill coming forward in the coming session, although I've not seen anything directly. And then big picture revenue. Regardless of what happens with the CCA, there are a number of revenue discussions going on in the transportation arena right now. House Committee Chair Jake Five, who himself has a challenge this election from the left, interestingly. We don't anticipate him being in too much trouble, but you never know. He is convening a series of listening sessions or informational sessions on the road usage charge, recognizing that I think we are now 13 years into some sort of official study on that, and recognizing that it would be a 5 to 10 year rollout if and when it is ready. They do want to move the ball forward on that. In the local government arena, I'm sure some of you have heard about the retail delivery fee discussions that have been proposed. Not a ton of money there, at least not a structural change that would be relevant for the state transportation budget, but other little items like that that could potentially be coming forward. And so I say all of that really to get the thought process is moving, to see if there's something or anything that the board would like to identify moving forward, heading into the 2025 session, recognizing a few of the question marks that still exist between now and then. So.
All right, Mayor Erickson.
The delivery fee, we were toying around with the idea of actually having a surcharge on licenses for delivery vehicles rather than this mechanism, either of which work. Question I have is, where is the revenue going to be dedicated towards? I was kind of hoping they'd put it towards the Transportation Improvement Board, or directly to cities. Our neighborhood streets are just getting beat up because of the delivery trucks, and we don't have a real funding source to do that maintenance and repairs. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, the only two states have done this so far, and they've been looking at it in different ways, Minnesota and Colorado. And they're just now coming online. And so this is a pretty new process. The legislature would have to determine how they want that spent. Obviously, this idea is coming in large part from AWC, viewing it as a potential local government option. What I would say is keep an eye on weight fees, because I could see a scenario in which they don't necessarily go for a retail delivery fee targeting a particular industry, but look at the weight, the vehicle weight fees as they're on the roads. That's something that I've been hearing from some of the members as might be a more palatable.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense and actually directs the responsibility because seriously, FedEx is just eating our neighborhoods up. And the trucks are way too heavy for literally the design of the road. We only do 2 inches of overlay. And when state, other roads are 4, so they're literally getting beat up. The other thing is, with the initiative coming forward, if it passes, I heard Representative 5 just say effectively they're going to have to rip the budget up and start over. Okay. Are you hearing what that might look like, or what does that mean?
I think that, there are two things that I would highlight whenever we're talking about new revenue. Number one is gas tax has been the tried and true, but recognizing that that's a dwindling, return on investment, given the higher fuel efficiency. I think you could see a scenario where electrical vehicle fees, some sort of additional weight fees, that's typically where they start. And if you go back to even Connecting Washington, they would do a kind of a pre-package package on some of the fees, tire fees, things like that. That's often where they've started in the past to get the ball rolling. I wouldn't be surprised to see some of that this year. Some sort of, to your point about the retail delivery fee, both of those states have done it a little bit differently. I think Minnesota is dedicating most of it to the cities, whereas Colorado is doing a split between clean transportation. If the CCA goes away and they're looking to backfill clean transportation issues, then all of a sudden you might see, well, sorry, cities and counties, we got to take care of ourselves first. And so, no real prediction, no real crystal ball, other than I think everything's going to be on the table this year. And if past sessions have been any indication, the chairs of the House and Senate Transportation Committee have not always been on the exact same page, at least at the outset, on where they're coming from. And we will see if the general fund is in a position to do another sort of backfill on that, and who is going to be in position to help with that. But structurally, Mayor Erickson, just about everything's going to be on the table, especially if CCA goes away. The big question mark right now is, in an incoming administration, new governor, all of that, is there going to be a real strong desire by a new governor, a new administration, to raise taxes in year one? Right. And again, not moving off of transportation just for a moment, just as an example, the 1 to 3% property tax increase that's been, or property tax limit, growth limit that's been discussed for years, is something that has gotten some legs legislatively. Is the governor going to be interested in making that a policy position in year one of a new administration? And so you have some of the political elements at play as well here. And that's why I come back to fees, weight fees, things that are a little bit easier to get done and might stem the, staunch the bleeding a little bit, as we head into larger discussions. So.
Okay, Counselor Stern.
Just kind of a good of the order. Dylan, I know that the Senate Transportation Committee will be conducting a general meeting in these chambers on September 17. In terms of Kitsap Transit specific, you see any input necessary at that meeting or opportunity, or is it just a general airing of high level issues?
Just a general area. What I would say is I've sat in on a couple of these types of briefings this year. WOOF, the Highway Users Federation, of which Kitsap Transit's a member, had a briefing from WashDOT Secretary Millar recently on maintenance and preservation. And that's getting a very significant look finally, about the maintenance and preservation of our system. You know, we're talking roads and bridges on that side of the ledger. On the transit side of the ledger, the unknown is still the CCA. Now, we at Kitsap Transit, obviously, we're set to receive 4 million for the hydrofoil issue. That's sort of contingent upon the passage. There was some inductive charging money last year that is still up in the air as well, based on whether the initiative passes or not. Thankfully, a lot of our other individual capital appropriations, the study for intra-county POF, things like that, were not tied to CCA. And so some of those things are moving forward regardless. Our toll credit issue, not tied to CCA, obviously. And so we're going to be in a position to move forward one way or the other. But if the CCA goes away, then obviously the hydrofoil project is in jeopardy from the state funding perspective. Some of the additional inductive charging money that was available, and then just those pots of money moving forward. And so, you know, I wouldn't necessarily highlight anything specific to Kitsap Transit other than if you want to bring up some of these guys who keep winning all the awards, that's always nice too. So, but we will come back, if not on October 1st, apparently, then sometime in October. And so we'd solicit input. Feel free to work with John. Most of you, or a lot of you, have my contact info too, if you have thoughts that you want to air out.
Okay. Yeah.
I have two questions. One is, it's almost not worth having the legislative conversation until we know if the CCA initiative passes,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
one way or the other. So that's just a thought in terms of timing with Dylan. My question to you, Dylan, is, was the kids ride free, the free fares for under 18, was that CCA money?
That's going to be impacted. If the CCA goes away, then that would definitely be impacted because a lot of the backfill money was coming from there, is my understanding. And so it doesn't just hit capital, it's operations too, essentially.
Okay.
If I may add to that, that is a local decision. The funding that we receive from the CCA, for us to get able to even receive that funding, we needed to take action to eliminate the fares for youth. So they're not necessarily tied together. It will be your decision as to how we want to move forward if that initiative is successful.
But to access some of that money, that was a prerequisite. So if it goes away, the funding goes away, do we still want to keep the policy? Will be a decision for this board.
Okay. So it looks like, see, not next month, but the month after Super Tuesday, we will meet as a board, and that night we'll find out how that major initiative's going.
Or 2 weeks after, depending.
Well, and then we'll get the initial results, and 2 weeks after, we actually meet, have a regularly scheduled bi-weekly meeting. So that might be something we set aside for, however we want to word it. It might be a crisis. We can probably consider it a crisis that we need to address. And so Dylan, any information you can start gathering to help with our decisions that we're going to have to make, working with us, that'll be great.
Absolutely.
Communication, I think, was brought up earlier. We're going to be ready to communicate at a level that hasn't been, we haven't done before. So it's going to be a pretty big lift.
There's always some unknowns in an election year like this where everything's up, statewide, but the initiative has added a new layer to it, to say nothing of the other 3 initiatives that could impact state funding as well. But
Yep. So that sounds all right. Thank you, Dylan.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Hold on just a second.
We're at public
I
comment.
think we're at public comment.
Yeah.
All right. We'll start with the members of the audience. Anyone want to offer some public comment for our consideration? All right, seeing none, I'll go to the clerk. Anybody online? All right. That puts us at good of the order. Second here, I'm logging back in. And we're at good of the order. So Counselor Mockler.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. I wanted to start by saying thank you so much for planning to publish the benefits of the CCA and to send them out to the community at large. Just a factual, here's what we get, here's what would happen. My second and final is, it's September, so it is time to say. We haven't got dial-a-ride in Bremerton except on Sundays. And I wonder how much it would cost to institute dial-a-ride in the city of Bremerton. Is there any other member of the board that would like to have that figure before us?
If it meant losing fixed routes and substituting them with dial-a-ride, I think that's a heavier discussion, not that we shouldn't just shoot out here right now. Because I think that's the economics of this whole operation.
Is that what happened in Bainbridge? Fixed routes were eliminated when dial-a-ride was brought in.
Well, right now, we look at every jurisdiction, and I'll let Director,
Yeah, here I'm just saying, it
right,
would be
but
good
they-
to know what it would cost.
right, and if they in certain circumstances, dial-a-ride could be introduced in other parts where there's nothing currently, especially if a fixed route is inappropriate. And so dial-a-ride is better than nothing. Fixed route is better. But I think we would probably need a more robust roundtable discussion with some, input from the director. If the board wanted to add this to our next mid-month session,
Okay,
yeah.
I think what you're alluding to there is our dial-a-ride is typically our incubator service. And it also involves our union contracts too, whether I don't think they can compete with each other, is my understanding, being on the board for a little while. And when we get enough rides in an area, as Mayor Wheeler stated, then we would want to add fixed route service. But I don't believe we can operate them or should be operating them in the same areas.
absolutely. And in fact, Director Clausen has frequently mentioned that the dial-a-ride indicates to Kitsap Transit where future fixed routes might best go. I am not saying that this should replace fixed routes, but we have, we're the densest city on the Kitsap Peninsula, the most populous city. And this is a really good place for us to have fixed routes, since this is the only mechanism that I have heard of since I've been on the board for establishing where new fixed routes might best go. If there is another mechanism, I would be very happy to learn of it. But right now, what we have is lots of people using lots of cars. Our roads also are getting quite beaten up. And to move Kitsap Transit from a strongly commuter focused entity to one that can actually replace single occupancy vehicles would be a real boon, and would get us not a rodeo award, but would get us an award in the world of reducing our carbon footprint, living more lightly on the land.
Commissioner.
Yeah, I feel like 6 months ago, to Councilmember Mockler's credit, she is persistent. And I feel like the last time we had this conversation, we said, let's have a work session on the current dial-a-ride program. Where is it? How's it paid for? What's the ridership?
Yeah.
What would it take to expand it to Bremerton? Or does the transit planner have other ideas of where the next best place to deploy it would be? Have we had that work session? I don't remember it. And if not, I think that would be a great conversation for us.
Yeah.
We did have a high level discussion about it, and to respond, Bainbridge Island doesn't have both. They either have fixed route or they have dial-a-ride. They don't have both. So they have the fixed route during the commute hours, and then during the middle of the day, other than the trunk route that runs from Winslow to Paulsbo, the island is served by demand responsive That's the BI Ride is the app and everything else. So if you would like, I mean, we'd be happy to provide how much access costs per hour. That's a pretty easy number to provide, and that will give you an indication of, how much an hour, 1 hour of bus service would be, and then you can make your determination. Do you want it from 9 to 5 or what? But we did have that discussion at a work study.
And it, one of the things is, where we all work together to look at the transit as an entire system that serves all of us. And if we were to set aside time to get a budget to that is essentially for our research and development, which these type of pilot programs, if we're going to use them to gauge interest and where demand might be, then doing it from a system-wide perspective and getting that type of information where we can use data, facts, data, information to determine where we might allocate those scarce, precious transit dollars to do this. In fact, and of course, factoring in where's density currently and where's density projected, but where are we not serving individuals at all, or where it could be beefed up. And, I would support looking at something working with the agency. But this is money. Now, again, this is a new program and a new way of looking at, transit, how we might develop, a strategic plan to deploy this type of operation, the dial-a-ride. We're getting onto the budget season. So it's, and it won't be free. Maybe we'll just pick it up during the budget. When is the first budget presentation?
We've got the one-on-ones, as we refer to it. I believe most of those are scheduled now, and I don't have, because
Okay.
they're scheduled throughout.
Yeah, okay.
But the other thing too is that I think I shared this with you. Because of the initiative, we're actually preparing two budgets. One is if the initiative fails, and the other is if the initiative is successful. So we're doing that because we're not going to have an awful lot of time between the initiative and us getting a budget approved. And in fact, I think I shared that we normally strive to have the budget approved in the first meeting in November. This year, we're deliberately pushing it to December just because of the initiative, and we don't know.
Okay. All right. I'm just why don't we pick this up at another time, knowing that this is out there. My goal, maybe this is me speaking personally, and it's not to have us jurisdictions pitted against each other. I think we're going to have to continue doing what we already do very well, and that's working together, shoring up each other when we can, when weaknesses come to a crisis, working together to close the gaps. And we're going to continue on that mode of operation. So,
Mayor, just quick clarifying question. There was a high level discussion on that. Can the information, was that a board meeting where there was a high level discussion on this?
Work study, and I didn't get any direction from the board. So
Okay,
kind of discuss
if
with
you
our
can just
board.
give us the date, then I can go look up the minutes. That's all. Thank you very much.
Mayor, we are 20 minutes late, and there's another meeting.
all right, this meeting is adjourned.
Recording stopped.